All right, everybody, this is a very special episode of Next Level Radio, and it's different from our normal weekly episode. I was asked to be the keynote speaker in Beach, North Dakota for one of their business events for their city, and I had a wonderful time, but we got to talk about business, and specifically what I've coined addictive business. This is a speech that is very well-rounded, it's very polished, and we were able to bring you great audio and great video for the whole event. I thank Beach, North Dakota for having me and expanding the opportunities to do these speaking events, as it's my favorite thing in the entire world. So I want you to listen to this speech. If you have a notebook, grab a notebook. If you take notes on your phone, grab your phone. I want you to listen to this speech because I've seen multiple people, over a handful of people, take concepts out of this speech and apply it to their marriage, being a parent, business, life, addiction, whatever it is. And I've seen people apply it and have positive benefits out of it. So I want you to take one thing, just one thing, take it, apply it, and I want you to post down and comment in the YouTube comments here. I want to see what you gravitate towards, what speaks to you, and what can we do further to help bring you out of addiction, bring you into business, or find the things that you're very, very passionate about in this life. So this is a very special episode. Tune in, listen, and truly absorb these points and take one thing. And we also appreciate if you guys subscribe to our YouTube. It is a very, very small effort to make a big, big impact for a very small and broke creator. We'll see you guys on the other side.
Having trained athletes for many, many years, we have tried every treadmill known to man. You name it, we've tried it. With these treadmills, there's always been a disconnect, something missing for our athletic performance, something that just does not correlate to athletic success on the field until we tried our TrueForm runners. TrueForm for over 10 years has been elevating the performance of pro athletes, college athletes, recreational runners, and everyday athletes alike. You can check out TrueForm treadmills at trueformrunner.com, and we thank TrueForm for being an exclusive sponsor of Next Level Radio. All right, it's time we all grow up a little bit. Ditch the pre-workout. It's not 2007 anymore, and it's nothing like Jacked 3D. Ditch the shaker. You're not 4 years old and you don't need a bottle anymore. And get yourself the best dippable pre-workout on the market. Each pouch is patriotically packed with 300 milligrams of caffeine and vitamins because shaker bottles suck. Send It Sups is the on-the-go solution for athletes, LEOs, firefighters, door kickers, and everybody in between. Head over to senditsups.com to get the best dippable pre-workout on the market, and we thank Send It Sups for being a sponsor of Next Level Radio. Next Level Radio continues to grow because of our listeners and our sponsors. Today we present you Fat Fish Brewing, the official beer of Next Level Radio. Whether you're looking for a night out with family or smashing the best craft beers in the area, you will find it all at Fat Fish Brewing. Check out Fat Fish on the Large Street in Dickinson, or check them out on their website at fatfishbrewing.com. Life has an amazing way of coming full circle and bringing to you the people that you need in your life at that time. As a young whippersnapper, 4 monsters deep, just excited to tackle the day, I'm headed to my first strength and conditioning conference, and I hear about a company called Team Builder. Multiple coaches with experience with Team Builder and other platforms said the exact same thing. They said that you can get very similar products across different platforms. However, the thing that truly sets aside Team Builder and puts their product above anybody else's is their true and genuine customer service. As a customer for many years, both at the university setting and the private facility, I can tell you, Team Builder's customer service is absolutely second to none. Late night emails, programming issues, emergencies on my end are all resolved very, very quickly. So join the thousands of universities and private facilities that use Team Builder to elevate their businesses by going to teambuilder.com, Click Start My Free Trial and use code NLT at checkout. Our next sponsor, Nutridyne, a medical supplement company aimed at enhancing performance and addressing the underlying issues of disease. You will be hard-pressed to find the quality that you'll find at Nutridyne. Listeners of this podcast get 20% off all supplements. Just go to @coach_Wortman and click the Nutridyne link in our bio. Keep up with us on Instagram @coach_Wortman, on our website, nl-training.com, or keep up with us on the next episode of Next Level Radio. Now sit back, relax, and take in the mind-melting knowledge of this episode.
First, want to start off with a couple things, and they're probably more important than this whole speech that I'm going to give to you guys. Matt, being my first barber in Dickinson, as you guys know, you can learn a lot at a barbershop, right? And you learn a lot about culture. You learn a lot about the city, the community, all these different things. He doesn't give himself enough credit a lot of the times. If you know Matt, that's probably one of his best traits, not giving himself enough credit. If you guys have not, I know being in Beach, you guys get to Dickinson sometimes, but the thing that him and his brother built is something super, super special. He talks about building this culture, and he talks about the position that he's in currently, where he's at with the North Dakota Small Business. But he's not somebody that just talks about building culture. It's a very, very cool, special place that if I had to say a place in town has built a culture around what they do, DePore's House of Barbering is that. It is a very, very amazing environment with very great people, and it's something that you don't see traditionally. So I first off want to say that and appreciate his introduction and everything that he does. It doesn't go unnoticed. So for you guys, I try not to put too many people asleep when I do this stuff. I really, really do enjoy the speaking stuff when I have a full voice. So we'll see how we get through this. But as Matt said, my name's Colby Wortman. Originally grew up in small town Wyoming, right in the Bighorn Basin. I was a mountain boy, always in the Bighorn Mountains. And again, I met a local, so we won't see those mountains for a little while. However, I have a very really whatever you want to call it, interesting story, full of road bumps and blockades and dirt roads and potholes, everything you could think of. And what we do with this is I've learned a couple things throughout my the spectrum of experience that apply to business and apply to business very, very well. My background, coming from Wyoming, played college football, was able to have some great success on that end, both academically and athletically, and then got into the strength and conditioning world. Okay, so I lift weights for a living. I wear sweats 365 days a year. I have one nice pair of dress pants, and that's really how we go with things. Okay, probably the last time Matt saw me speak, I was probably wearing this same thing. So. But nevertheless, I really do enjoy it and appreciate the opportunity. So this story kind of starts off, and I'll go over the basis of what I'm trying to get across here today. And I hope it serves as a powerful reminder for every single thing that you do, employee, employer, father, mother, coach, teacher, whatever it is, it can apply to everything, okay? So as we go through this, just kind of think about how this applies to you, and I do ask quite a bit of questions, and I usually do not move on until I get responses, so it depends on what time you want to get home. So first off, I start with this, and this is going to apply to the very last slide of what we talk about today, okay? I always say this, no matter if you believe in, if we were sitting in Colorado right now, no matter if you believe in Subarus and oat milk and a little bit of yoga as your higher calling, or you believe in what I call God as a higher calling, I truly believe that it's an essential piece to business, to being a father, a mother, a coach, okay? But this is something that ties right directly back into what we're going to be talking about at the end. So the point is this, 2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 8. The point is this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Okay, this will come back to a very important key metric that I use, that I struggle with too, in business and being successful in your own right, whether that is brewing beer, whether that is fitness, whether that is agriculture, whatever that is, okay? So here is a quote that I like to start off with as a negative example of what we're going to be talking about. So strength does not come from a physical capacity. It comes from an abominable will. And I get exactly where this is coming from, and it's a quote that we can all resonate with, but I 150% disagree with what this has to say, okay? When we talk about the things we're going to talk about as the title pertains, we are human and we are built off of habit formation, habits and routines. Everything boils down to habits and routines, both positively and negatively. Everything we do. I could pick out any topic, any aspect of your life, and it's going to boil down to what have I done in the past that's going to dictate what I usually do in the future, okay? So how I look at this is if you have Reese's Puffs in the house, the Reese's Puffs aren't going to go stale. We're going to eat the Reese's Puffs, correct? Okay? So saying here, strength does not come from physical capacity, it's from your own will. I believe that will is fugazi. It's not a real thing. It comes down to what have you done in the past, what am I going to do now, and what are we going to do in the future? Okay? The habit formation that we've built. And as you'll see, after these next two slides, you're going to see that habit formation is both positive and negative and can really hurt you in a lot of things. Okay? So my whole scheme of this presentation is to accomplish three things. Introduce my story as a catalyst to where we want to go. Change the world's perspective on addiction and addicts. Number one. Okay? Number two, set the standard in your life and be able to apply it now, okay? And elicit change on the cellular level. When I say cellular level, your personal being, your personal business, your personal family, your marriage, however that applies to the situation that you're in right now. And then how we can use those addictive tendencies and addictive lessons to apply it to our business, whether that's running a ranch or running a gym. There is so many parallels between both, okay? So those are the three things that we're going to really, really focus on. Here is just some contact information, email, some of the stuff, my podcast on Spotify, YouTube, all that, and then some of the online stuff that we do through our gym. And I have, we can chat afterwards if that interests you at all. So very basically, a quick timeline. I'll try to breeze through this as fast as we can. Went to Worland High School in the best state in the Union, Wyoming. Just kidding. But I ended up coming to Dickinson State and played college football there. Got my Bachelor's of Science. Got my phys ed degree as well. And after that, I became a strength and conditioning coach right out of high school. Right out of college at a high school. Took my CSCS and were able to start training athletes right away. Those are the people I like being around. At my facility that I own with my partners is the Iron Chapel, and I train 90% athletes, okay? And that's just my cup of tea. The habit formation around being an athlete is extensive, okay? And so after that, I was the first ever hired strength and conditioning coach at Dickinson State University. Prior to that, at the NAIA Division II level, your offensive line coach, who's also your PE teacher, who's also the assistant track coach, is your strength coach. Mine just happened to have 7 Mountain Dews a day and just wasn't somebody that you could learn strength and conditioning from, okay? Having said that, after we went through there, I became what's called a power athlete block 1 coach. This is a big crux in my journey. You can compare it to, if you're looking at the military, you can compare it to some very elite groups of the military. Okay, it is 3 days that you pay absorbent amounts of money for to just get your ass kicked all day long, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then we get into where we're at now, okay? I own outright Next Level Training, where I train my athletes, but our physical location is the Iron Chapel, okay? We look at the holistic approach of training an athlete, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and making them better humans. Our end goal is we want to make better athletes, but the overarching goal is just better humans, okay? From there, that's where we're at today. Work with high schools, work with college kids. I've had a few guys play in the NFL that we've trained for the Eagles and the Chiefs, and that's where we're at, okay? But before we go on to this next slide, I need a little, you don't have to even say anything, raising hands. Raise your hand in this room if you have struggled with it or you have it in your family. If you've struggled with or have addiction in your family. 90%, okay? Just think about that as we're going through this, because the things that I learned through this journey can obviously be applied, and wisdom is learning from other people's experiences and their downfalls, right? So try to learn from mine. I'd give this speech a lot to high school, college kids as well. And if you can learn from the people around you and their mistakes, it will make you very far in life. So first things first, when you see this picture here, what is the first thing that comes to mind right off the top of the head? Positive, negative, or indifferent? Just throw something out there. Laziness. Homeless. Depression. Drugs. Taxes. Our taxes? Yeah. I gotcha. So these are all very relevant things, and these are all things that we think about what happens with this, okay? And I'm going to come back to this picture here in about 4 minutes. We'll come back to this picture, and I hope this makes a little bit more sense for you here soon, okay? So let's lay out a story here. We walk out of here, Beach, North Dakota, say we're in Fargo. Maybe it makes a little bit more sense in Fargo. We walk out here, there's a gentleman in a wheelchair, obviously very intoxicated on whatever drug of choice, and we see that individual and we start making perceptions instantly, right? Mental health, depression, drugs, laziness, the whole slew, right? So we start making these perceptions right away. What I try to tell people is that not all drug addiction looks the exact same. This is the traditional look, right? In the next picture, most people will recognize when I pull this up. This is the traditional look, and what I'm trying to do is possibly change your perception on addiction and how it applies to business, okay? Because everything that came off the top of the head is exactly what you first thought when you saw this image. So the thing that is wrong with addiction is not addiction itself, it's how we perceive addiction, okay? How we perceive it is through our old habits. How we perceive it is through our old experiences. So that's what comes top of mind when we first see something like this. Because when I first see something like this, prior to my experiences, I strip every normal facet of life from this individual. They're not married, they don't have kids, they don't have a successful job, they don't own businesses, right? I strip that away instantly. I see that guy outside and I strip that away. He's not a family man. He's not this, right? And we pull those things away instantly, and I hope we can change that perception just a little bit. So this was a big picture in the news for a long time. A very sad picture as we go into it. So I'm sure some people recognize this picture. East Liverpool, Ohio, September 2016. Young boy, this is they get DUI and child endangerment, okay? The story is they are on a little bit of a high-speed chase. This is at the start, at the crux of fentanyl coming into our world, and as it's getting manufactured and bring across the southern border. And at this time, it was a very big deal. This was all over the news, this picture. If you don't recognize it right away, you'll start to hear it and think about it. The big thing with this, and this is a hard picture to look at, they were on a high-speed chase, and then once they stopped, these parents were completely passed out cold, and as you can see, this little boy is absorbing every single thing that's going on, okay? So what this brings us to is the multi-generational effect that addiction has on our lives, no matter what it is. Beer, porn, heroin, cocaine, business, money, whatever it is. We all have it. Every single one of us has it in something of us, okay? We try to tailor it to something positive so we don't become slaves to it, but every single one of us has this, okay? So for me, I look at this picture a little bit differently. Let's take this gentleman right here, and let's rewind 45 years, okay? Put him in this back seat. Put his father here, his mother here, and things start making a little bit more sense, right? Things start to really start to think about, like, why is he in this situation? Why is he there? And how was his role models towards him, okay? So this situation is the same exact situation I was in. Growing up, my father was an alcoholic, super, super violent alcoholic, and the statistics do not fare well for young boys, young girls, anybody in that situation. If you have addiction in the home, you are eight times more likely to be an addict if it's just in the home, 8 times. Additionally, 4 times more likely if you are a male child with a father that has addiction. 8 and 4 times, okay? In 2014, 1 in 8 kids dealt with addiction in their lives, in their homes. Present time, we're at 1 in 4. Every 4th kid, or 25%, have addiction in the household, okay? So this is something that can really affect the generational aspect of our world and where we're at today, and it just seems to get worse. Some of the small stuff I'll skip over. 2 times more likely to have depression, 2 times more likely to have general depression, OCD, separation anxiety, an increased chance of social anxiety. But then we look at the flip side, and this is where the things can start to get good. Addicts that come on the other side of addiction and successfully beat it, there's a massive, massive portion of them that become business owners, professional athletes, fathers, great fathers at that, great mothers, right? So there's this increased chance, but what's that key that gets us from that one point to the other side? And I hope we can really get there. So I'll make this quick too. So my story, very quickly, is this. The picture here was my first day of sobriety, okay? I just hit 8 years of sobriety like 4 weeks ago, okay? I just hit my 8-year mark. This is my first picture ever. I'll get to the story here. I blacked out the 2 faces of these gentlemen because they have both deceased, okay? Since the last time I actually gave this talk, which was less than a year ago, okay? So having said that, this picture here where I said it, right here and right here. I'm sober here, first day of sobriety. I'm an all-conference 4.0 student addicted to heroin, okay? Addicted to opiates, whatever I could get, okay? So that picture right there should elicit the same response as this. All addiction doesn't look the same. Nothing looks the same in addiction, okay? And having said that, it's much bigger and a different contrast, right? But there's so many people that are struggling with it that we don't know, okay? So we need to tread lightly when we're trying to have conversations or learning about people, right? So where did business come into this? Where did my business start? My business started as a middle-class kid. I get a pair of cleats every 3rd year, right? We don't get the brand new stuff, anything like that, but a very middle-class family. And I had everything I needed. I had a great family. My parents divorced really young, but the big problem here is where my business started was the Wild West of the pain medication epidemic is how I call it. So the early 2000s, when doctors didn't have an inter-doctor network, okay? I found this out because I was a drug addict. Back then, you could go to 5 separate doctors and have 5 separate scripts, and they had no idea, okay? And then being a halfway decent athlete, they want you to play ball. They want you to be on the field, okay? So those doctors are gonna give you whatever you want, okay? I remember multiple times acting like I stubbed my toe, here's your pain medication script. Like, it was that easy, okay? Giving North Dakota props, North Dakota has always been 10 times better than Wyoming. Wyoming was terrible, absolutely horrendous. And it's probably ruined more lives than we think. So as we get there, and at this next slide, I was a king of living a double life. A king of living a double life. I had a 4.0, I had all these things, all these accolades, but I was so broken inside. I didn't have the love that we were looking for, that I was able to hide it very, very well. So team captain, all these things, felt like everybody loved me, but I just couldn't love myself. And it comes down to a point, this isn't part of the speech, but I think it's very important, is it comes down to a lack of love in every scenario of addiction. Every single scenario of addiction, it comes down to a lack of love, okay? We can stem it back to a lack of love somewhere. For me, I went through treatment twice. The first time was just out of will. That doesn't work, okay? It does not work because I wasn't having habits around it and a higher calling with it. But it comes down to what are we going to do day in and day out every single time. One of my favorite quotes out of this is, most men live lives of quiet desperation. Okay, we go through our life, we don't talk about things, and we live this life of quiet desperation. So now that you can kind of see this, this is what true addiction looks like, and this is why we can hopefully lend a different perspective to that, okay? And then as we get forward, this is our last slide before we really get into the business stuff. Rock bottom, the kind of the funny thing of a crappy situation, you usually don't get a lot of great pictures and videos from rock bottom, right? You're usually not gonna take a lot of pictures there. But my rock bottom was different than most people's. I don't believe that rock bottom has to be this, I crashed my car, I hurt somebody, I got thrown in jail. It's all different for everybody. And as we go through this, I can tell, like I can see and watch you guys are eliciting stories in your head of people that you know, people in your lives, and where they're at in this. So my rock bottom was probably the most influential story, and this is the pivot of my business, the pivot of my business. I was all conference player, getting ready to play our next game, and I ran out of drugs. Okay, and at this point, I had a crux. I had a divide in the road. And I always knew I didn't have to wreck a car or hurt somebody or do anything. I always knew, and they talk about business owners, people 10, 20, 30, 40 times X of anything I will ever do. They always have this intuition that they're meant for something a little bit more. That they have something more to give to this world, right? And I didn't have a very high standard at that point. I am living a fake life, doing heroin, doing pain meds, doing everything to escape a current reality that I was in. But I had this moment where I knew that I had something more to give. I didn't know what the heck it was at that point, right? So at that point, I did not, and this is how impactful being a coach, a teacher, an aunt, an uncle, somebody that you can relate to can be, how powerful it can be. I didn't call at the point of my lowest ever, going through withdrawals, doing all the things off the worst drugs this world has to offer. I didn't call my mom. I didn't call my dad. I didn't call my friends. I called my head football coach, Coach Pete Stanton. A lot of people here know him. Some may know him, okay? I played under Coach Bijou, and then I played under Pete Stanton. I called Pete Stanton, I go to his office, I tell him about this, and it freaking throws him for a whirlwind. His star outside linebacker is on heroin. Like, you say the word heroin, you're like, ooh, it's kind of like a heebie-jeebie feeling. At that point, Coach Stanton gets me to the hospital, okay? He has 100 other players on the roster. I'm just another guy. In the game of football, in the game of college football, it's next man up. It's a business, right? He takes me to the ER and stays with me for 3.5 hours as I'm withdrawing off the worst drugs this world has to offer, okay? It's hard for me not to get emotional about that. That man saved my life. That man created my business. That man allowed me to live, and now I'm a father. I'm a husband. Like, those are all big things that everybody else in here is, that we have this crossroads, and it was usually tied to a person, right? It was Coach Stanton for me. Coach Stanton saved my life with all this on here, okay? And he's amazing, amazing individual. So fast forward, I've been able to have 8 years of sobriety, business, family, life, master's degree, all this stuff that does not matter if Coach Stanton didn't show me a little bit of love, right? If he wouldn't have showed me that, none of this matters. None of this matters. And if fentanyl was a big thing when I was in my drug addiction days, I would not be giving this speech today. I can tell you that right now. So fast forward, master's degree and getting married to my best friend. So where does this come in? Where can you build a business like an addict? Okay, these are the big things through this trials and tribulations and these rocky roads that I was able to learn that completely revamped my life. So, in order to talk about addiction, we need to define addiction. Okay, and I promise I'm not boring you too much. We're almost done. In order to talk about it, we need to define it. In the dictionary definition, the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Okay? So that's what we have as a base root definition of addiction. What I like to talk about it is, and this is my definition that I've kind of combined it from a bunch of different people. I stand on the shoulders of giants, many different people's definitions, and then I made it my own. Addiction is not a choice or a medical disease. It's not a moral failure. It's not a weakness of character. It's not a failure of will. Again, all it is a response to human suffering. That's what it comes down to. It's a response to human suffering. This is how we should look at addiction. This is how we should look at people that we know struggle with addiction. This is how we should look at ourselves when we're thinking about addiction, okay? It's a searching or longing for love, affection, and acceptance. So what do the numbers show? 40 million, or 12.1% of Americans are addicts, okay? You can't find this next number, but it's astronomically high. A good majority of people that actually get on the other side of addiction, it's a second part of their life, it's a totally different world, become successful business owners, or business owners at that. Athletes, great fathers, great mothers. They become these big things because of the things they went through and the steps and the stories and the tools that I'm going to define here that they learned through that time. So the origin of addiction comes from the root word adheresy, okay? To bind to or assign to, okay? So we're assigning ourselves just like AA, right? Anything like that. Me personally, I have a different belief system around it. It is one of the most effective things you can do. But the one thing I have a problem with is my name's Colby and I'm an addict. When I openly talk about my addiction, and I openly talk about it a lot. But to continue labeling yourself and adhering yourself to that label, I have a hard time with it. I look at it as a whole different part of life. Because you looking at me up here, thank the good Lord above, I don't look like your traditional drug addict, right? But it was 10 years of my life, a whole decade of my life, okay? So this is probably the most important portion of this presentation, okay? Applying it to business, relationships, life, marriage, whatever you want to apply it to. Okay, so let's take the cycle of addiction here first, okay? So let's say we have a bad employee, okay? Whether that be bad training on my end or just a rogue employee. So we have an internal frustration. We start fantasizing about what would be great, what a great employee would have, right? What that employee would do, what they would look like, how we go about that. Then we start obsessing about that. And that's what we're thinking about. How do I get rid of this person to get this person? Then it's the substance abuse portion, right? So on the cycle of addiction, we'll get to that in a second, but on the substance abuse side, this is where that we can intertwine positive or negative growth, okay? And what I mean by that is this cycle of addiction and the cycle of success is the exact same thing, okay? So before I finish that one, let me actually go back to this. So the cycle of a true addiction. So let's go back to a different story here. Sorry about that. Internal frustration. We have a fight with our wife or our husband. We fantasize about not having that in our lives, not being able to have to fight about that, X, Y, and Z, and we start obsessing about it. We then turn to some types of substance, porn, food, working out, whatever that is, okay? So then after the substance abuse, we have a loss of control. We have a guilt over use. This is the worst portion of the entirety of this cycle. Guilt is what keeps people mostly in a rut in business, in a rut in addiction, in a rut in marriage, okay? So we have this guilt over use, and we think about it. That was my father's big thing. He started drinking one day and messed up, and then he just kept on being guilty and feeling guilty and feeling guilty. He could never break it until he turned about 55 years old. And then we cease to use of that, of whatever that fixation is. Time passes, and we have another problem. Okay, so we're back to the top. Now let's look at it on the successful side. Okay, same exact cycle. We have an internal frustration. We can't get our new beer to Dickinson. We want to get it to DePore's House of Barbering. Okay, that's where we want to get our new beer. I'm kind of getting an in here, Matt, if you didn't see that. We have an internal frustration. We fantasize like, dang, I could get it would be great for our company. I could retire. I could build this business. We could get an expansion. Then I obsess about it. I start making game plans about it. And then this is that pivot point, the substance abuse side. Do we turn to something that is instant gratification, or do we start getting to work, right? It's one key that we can change that's going to change this entire cycle. The one key, okay? We have a loss of control. We can't stop thinking about it. We just keep going, keep going, keep going. Guilt over use, and then we start and we have another full problem, right? And it's just this entire cycle. Addiction and success are the same thing. It's just how you deal with them. Addiction and success are the same thing, okay? This is one of my last things here too. Motivation can get into consistency. Motivation in itself is very fleeting. It's very fragile, okay? It's very, very short-term based, okay? So we get motivation into consistency. We start getting consistent, we start getting that habit, and then we get from consistency to habits. Now we have a habit formed after about 21 to 30 days. After that habit's formed, it's either positive or negative growth, okay? I have a motivation, I'm fighting with my wife. I start getting consistent about drinking to solve my problems. Now I'm in a habit of drinking every night, and now I have negative growth. Or I have a fight with my wife. We talk about it, we sit down, and we actually bring it to a head, right? We start getting consistent about that. Every time we have an argument, now it's a habit. We talk, we don't drink. It's the same thing, okay? And so I want you to see that parallel of how simple these topics can be put into your business, your life, your marriage, and whatever it is. This is my last slide. So building a relationship, building a business, building a life like an addict. These are the major things that I learned in addiction, okay? Very basically, being authentic, reshaping your thinking, do the uncomfortable work, be consistent, and the one I added in the last year, give more, take less, okay? So, it's starting to go. Be authentic. My Coach Stanton story is a very uncomfortable story to talk about. It's not something that I really ever wanted to talk about. I started a podcast pre-COVID, and still to this day, we're 120 episodes in. My most popular episode is the 5 things I learned for 5 years of sobriety. And the reason is because I talked about the Coach Stanton story. My business flourished because of that. My trust from my clients, my athletes, my employees, my employer, my actual members in my gym, my partners, everything fostered and grew from that moment when I started being authentic about it. That doesn't mean when you have problems in your life, you have to talk about them publicly, right? But it's being aware and being very authentic about those problems. Number 2, reshaping your thinking. As we talked about, motivation equals habits, or motivation equals consistency, habits equal consistency. How this works is addiction rewires your brain, but getting on the other side of addiction rewires your brain just as much. Okay, so we can get on the other side of this and rewire our brains just as easily as we did with the drugs, okay? Just as easily. It's that one substance abuse portion on that cycle, we fill it with something else, and we can move on, okay? Do the uncomfortable work. Motivation, as I said, there's probably a better word for it. I won't curse as much as I probably usually do. Motivation is crap. There's no such thing as motivation. It's a very short window. It's very fleeting, okay? Motivation is not real. You have to start by changing your identity, okay? So for us, I need to be able to do the uncomfortable work day in and day out. It's the sending the emails. It's mixing the hops that you don't like making. It's delivering the orders. It's making the food. It's having a meeting with the employees that we've told them like 7 times the same thing, right? It's being a manager and doing the daily stuff. We have to do that uncomfortable work day in and day out. Same thing with addiction. Be consistent. I talk about addict consistency. I don't know if I've coined this term, not. We'll see if I get a cease and desist or something. I don't know. But addict consistency. As an addict, you are consistently late. You're consistently a liar. You're consistently not doing the things you should be doing, right? How can we use that in our business? We need to use that addict consistency in a positive way. I'm always 20 minutes early. I always am happy with my employees. I'm always putting forth this culture. I'm always reaching out to that kid, you know? It's the small things that we can do for addict consistency. And then the last one, as we talked about, give more, take less, okay? I'll go back to here. God lays it out for us, guys. If we want true wealth, if we want a successful business, if we want anything of abundance in our life, we need to give more than we take in everything that we do, okay? If that's giving out free programs in whatever you do, if that's having events that all the proceeds go to a charity, if that's doing whatever, and it doesn't have to be public giving. This could be helping out somebody that you know that is struggling, okay? If we want true wealth in anything, whether that's wealth of knowledge, wealth of money, wealth of relationships, we have to give more than we take. And that's the one that I've added in the last year because it's really smacked me in the face. As a business owner, you get tied up in the money, your top line revenue, you get in all this stuff, and then you realize, I'm not giving, I'm just taking. And it's just a consistent cycle, okay? These are the aspects that I learned through 10 years of opiate addiction that I apply every single day in my business. And I hope you guys can take one of them and apply them in anything and everything you do as a manager, as a bank owner, as an assistant, as a coach, as a teacher, okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed that enough, and thank you guys very, very much for the opportunity to be here. Any questions after that at all? No?
Do you know a chiropractor by the last name of Wilder?
Wilder? I thought I knew every chiropractor in Dickinson.
He's in
There is.
Portland, Wyoming.
Oh, reframe of thinking here. Wilder.
Yeah,
Wilder.
might dig you well.
Yeah, you know, I don't know that last name, but I mean, the town is 5,000 people. Are they originally from there? Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. Holy moly. That's a new one. No, I don't know that last name. I know a couple of them there. Honestly, when I was in Worland, chiropractic wasn't as big when 2012 was the last year that I was living there. Now there's a couple there. But no, I don't know that name. You know him from here in Beach?
No.
Just a friend?
His daughter was my sister-in-law.
Oh, okay. Man, I miss Worland. It's a cool little place. I mean, it's tucked into the mountains. It's you're right there, but yeah, it's a good place, man.
Do you know Hargraves from the Iron Chapel?
I do, Mr. Matthew. Mr. Matthew Hargrave, I do. He is actually one of my employees' client, and I think I talk to him more than my employee does. I really like Matt a lot. He's good shit. He's very, very genuine guy. Very genuine guy. Yeah. How do you know Matt? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Awesome. Any other questions at all? Any pain points? Any comments, concerns? was checking my heart rate through the whole thing here too. Let's see.
Podcast called on Spotify.
It's on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. It's called Next Level Radio.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, we detail everything. There's only 2 episodes that are about addiction. That's not the big thing. Business, a lot of business, a lot of strength and conditioning topics. But really anything. I've done a series with all my buddies. I have a couple buddies that were in the special forces in the military, and so we detail how military applies to business and life. We're about 100, and tomorrow will be 118 episodes. So, yeah. And then we're revamping and putting more stuff on YouTube for that. So,
That's a pretty good feat.
yeah.
Like the podcast stats, or it's like
Usually after the first 5.
yeah.
I think it's like 80% after the first 5 fail. And don't get me wrong, it's not pulling a massive audience. I mean, we've put it out. We originally started the podcast right when COVID happened. I have a big network of college coaches, and all those high school seniors are missing their track season. They're missing their soccer season. They're missing all that. And that's their biggest year to get recruited. So I started it as an interview podcast, interviewing these high school athletes, talking about who they are, what they are, how they do it. And I was sending it to all my college coaches. Try to sit down in a room one-on-one with a high school kid these days and have like a very deep conversation. It wasn't pulling the biggest audience, but that's how we started, and we got a couple kids scholarships and got them pushed out there. So it was worth it. Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it. Yeah.
I think if you can get through to high school kids at all, even in like a minute.
Yes.
you're
Yes.
making some progress.
Seriously. Well, that attention span is here. Like I'd be like, okay, let's have a good conversation. Let's really like get this going. And I'm like, okay, introduce yourself. My name's Joseph. I go to Trinity High School. Nothing after that. Like I'm pulling, I'm prodding, I'm trying to get it out of them. It's tough. It's tough. But it got some kids some scholarships.
This generation,
Oh, man.
they are very, very addicted to their devices.
Oh, I didn't even mention that. That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, they really struggle with, and up at the high school, we have an absolutely no cell phone policy.
Good.
Which they all hated coming in, but as a teacher and a parent, it's the best thing.
Yeah.
I think for those kids to have to look at each other
Yep.
and have to have conversations, because that's a lost art with this generation. They
Oh.
just don't, when they can communicate in the first letter acronyms of all the sentences and things they're trying to say,
Yep.
they're not building relationships.
At all. Well, and we're starting to see it. I'm not going to make this political at all, but we're starting to see this now. The things that are most popular are Donald Trump going on Tucker Carlson and having a long-form conversation. It doesn't have to be Donald Trump, it could be anybody, but they're having these long-form conversations that people want instead of having this quick hit, everybody yelling at each other, the Republican primaries, where we're just yelling at each other. We cannot get anything out. It's like a 5-second soundbite, right? Like our nation is like craving deep, authentic conversations, and we're just not getting it because I should maybe do it in my gym, a no phone policy in my gym, because social media is such a big portion of what I do. It takes over my life. And my little boy turns 1 in like 18 days, and I had to set rules for myself. Like when I get home, there's none of this. I can't be on this thing because, I mean, this is a good example of what you're saying, and I'll stop talking after this. I'm sorry. But I am a new father. It'd be a year now on the 28th. So if we're at home, and I'm sure you guys have seen this that have had young kids, but as soon as I walk in the door, hug, kiss, talk to each other, and then we sit on the couch and I'm trying to decompress, right? I'm a business owner. I have five employees now. And I get on my phone and he's like pulling on my leg and he's whining. You want my attention. As soon as I set it down and I actually speak and look at him, he's done. He doesn't whine anymore. We're just grown humans. We're just grown kids. If you look at humans, adults, we're just grown kids. We're back at our own devices. Like, we just want attention. We want love. Like, that's what it boils down to with a high school kid who acts hardened and doesn't want to be happy with the world. He just wants a little bit of attention, Like, that's what it really boils down to. And my son taught me that. Like, I'll be sitting on my phone just like this and just whine. Nothing. And he's done. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, that it? Thank you guys so very much. Thank you. I think I only cursed once. That's a record. Are both these yours?
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
Thank you, I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yippers. Yeah.